The winter's first major snowfall leaves city residents shoveling out. Liability concerns stall a controversial council decision. And a new report points to major rail safety problems.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, city residents were digging out from the first real snowfall of the season this morning.
Thunder Bay OPP say surprisingly there were only 2 minor accidents with vehicles sliding off area highways, and area school buses were running as usual. Officials from Environment Canada say snow accumulations were difficult to measure due to high winds causing drifting snow, but some areas south of Thunder Bay received close to a foot of it. Jonathan Wilson reports.
Depending on where you live around Thunder Bay, Old Man Winter dropped anywhere from 5 to 30 centimeters of snow overnight. And with wind gusts over 50 kilometers per hour, it created snow drifts twice that high in some areas. For many, it was the first chance to try out the snow float or the snowblower this season, and people tend to have a love-hate relationship with the white stuff.
I like it. I don't mind it.
I love it this year because I have studded tires, but it is still heavy.
Well, I've been back home in Canada 15 years. I was raised in Florida, so you can imagine I miss Florida sometimes, especially this time of year. I bought it in the fall time for $200. Mary over there, she's 83 years old and I got a bad back, so I told her, and last year we shoveled all this driveway, so by ourselves. So I told her we weren't doing it this year, and I went and bought a used one and it works pretty good. So.
City snowplows were out at 2 o'clock in the morning and took about 8 hours to get all the main arterial roads cleared up. Roads Division Manager Brad Adams says this was their first full plowing event of the season. And with more snow in the forecast, he expects they'll be out again early Wednesday morning. Meteorologist Jeff Colson describes this storm system as a duration event and says it's still gathering strength from the U.S. What we've seen so far is the leading edge of the storm system, with more snow still to come.
As the system really gets going overnight tonight and during the day on Wednesday, expecting more accumulations both overnight tonight. We could be seeing another 5+ centimeters overnight tonight. We could be seeing another 10 centimeters possible during the day on Wednesday as the system gets even closer to Thunder Bay. And even as it goes away, even as it moves off to the northeast of Lake Superior during the day on Thursday, still some lingering snow activity expected to continue Thursday as well with a few more centimeters accumulation.
And with the arrival of winter weather comes another change. Calendar parking rules come into effect on Wednesday. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
An unusual sight on Thunder Bay's waterfront today. At a time when elevators are busily loading ships to help clear out record amounts of grain, one vessel was instead dumping grain from its holds. This was a scene at Richardson Terminal this afternoon as the self-unloader MV Saginaw spewed large amounts of grain onto the ground. The cargo had just been loaded onto the vessel yesterday. When contacted by TBT News, a spokesperson at the terminal indicated there was no problem with the ship, but he refused any further comment on the strange situation. Officials with the Port Authority could not be reached for comment.
The threat of personal lawsuits loomed large for some of Thunder Bay City Council last night as they debated ending a water delivery service. For more than 2 decades, the city has delivered water to about 120 rural households at a subsidized cost. But those residents contend the service is vital and losing it could chase them out of their homes. Dennis Ward has more.
I believe that it is strictly for cost saving.
Ending a decades-old water delivery service could save the city about $100,000 a year. Options for the homeowners would include having a private firm deliver their water, but that would come with a high cost, says Catherine Sertic, about $600 a month.
If you were to put that out to the other taxpayers within the city and say, okay, well, your rates are going up to $600 a month, how many people in the city would stand for it? I can't afford it. That would cripple my family.
240 plus people have signed their name to a petition calling on the city to continue the service. Many, including Sertic, say they make a lot of sacrifices to conserve water.
Showers, I like to call them military showers, and I often tell them, and I remind them repeatedly, turn the water on, soak yourself, shut it off, soap up, rinse off. And if it takes anything longer than that, I'll be at the door pounding.
Many of the people who have water delivered to their homes live in the McIntyre ward. Councillor Trevor Gertuga remembers what he went through growing up with the same issues.
We'd have a bath with about an inch and a half of water. And I'd go in, and then my brother would go in, and my other brother would go in before we drained it. I was always trying to be the first one, but didn't always work out like that. But this is what people do on a regular basis. And this is a necessity, water.
Other councillors were also sympathetic to what the people were going through and the possible hardships they would endure. But then the city solicitor reminded council of the legal implications involving water.
If there is an issue, if there's a contamination, it is not going to be just the municipality which is potentially named as the defendant. It could be each and every member of council and the mayor personally sued.
Council decided to hold off on a vote until more information on a number of issues can be provided. The matter is expected to come back next spring. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
The city's youth are calling for hundreds of thousands of dollars in new funding for programs and services. The Youth Services Plan was presented to Council last night after more than 2 years of planning. Included in the recommendations are increased support for the Boys and Girls Club in Evergreen. The plan also calls for 4 other neighborhood sites to complement those existing services. The city currently spends about $300,000 annually for youth programming and services. Implementing the new plan would increase that budget to roughly $1 million. Councillor Ian Angus says decades ago there were 6 centres for young people to go. He recently caught up with a person who is actively involved in them in Toronto.
One of the things he said was the youth centres in Thunder Bay saved his life. It gave him a place to go, a place where he was able to get food and to survive. And I've met so many, I call them kids, my youth center kids, over the years here in Thunder Bay that have the same stories.
The youth-driven ideas are in addition to the city's proposed multi-million-dollar partnership with the Indian Friendship Centre. Both plans come to council for debate on January 13th.
A group of female Northwestern Ontario leaders have come together to try and draw more women into politics. Today, the newly appointed Board of Women in Politics announced their first forum. It's scheduled to take place January 22nd at the Victoria Inn. The event will provide a platform for women to discuss public leadership roles in the North. Lynn McLeod is the keynote speaker. McLeod served in political office both locally and provincially for 33 years. City Councillor Linda Ridholm is vice chair of the board and says we need to help more women step up and run for office.
All other professions pretty well now have a higher percentage of women than we do in politics. You know, we have maybe 25% women elected across this country, and we need more. The United Nations claims from their studies that you need at least 30% of either gender to present that gender's perspective.
In its history, the city of Thunder Bay has elected 2 women as mayor, Dusty Miller in 1978 and Lynn Peterson in 2003.
Well, what kind of a relationship do you have with our government, and how could that relationship be made better? The Ontario Liberals want to know, and they're sending an independent group of researchers across the province to find out. Members of Ontario's new Open Government Engagement team met with the interested Thunder Bay residents last evening. It's part of the Liberals' new Open Government initiative announced by Premier Kathleen Wynne back in October. The focus, according to team leader and internationally recognized public engagement expert Don Lenihan, is to explore ways for the government to have a more open dialogue and more openly share information with its citizens. Those in attendance last night expressed a healthy degree of cynicism, and that's okay, says Lenihan.
Let's be frank about it. I think everybody recognizes it does sound like an oxymoron. Government that's open? I've never seen it. Can government be open? Let me ask you, what do you think? Are we sort of destined to have closed, secretive, condescending governments more and more and more? Or is it possible to make government better? I don't see why not.
The team has even begun to experiment with a new Twitter hashtag, OpenON, as a way to get public input. The team will report its findings directly to the Minister of Government Services in the spring of 2014.
Kenora OPP are reporting a huge marijuana seizure. It comes following a stop of an eastbound tractor-trailer unit yesterday afternoon on Highway 17 west of Kenora. Police say a search of that vehicle turned up 180 pounds of pot with an estimated street value of $450,000. A 43-year-old British Columbia man has been taken into custody.
Fort Francis couple have been identified as the victims in a fatal crash yesterday afternoon near Fort Francis. It happened on Highway 11 when a passenger car came into collision with a logging truck. A female passenger in the car was declared dead at the scene, while the male driver died later in hospital. Dead are 82-year-old David Chambers and 75-year-old Louise Chambers. The driver of the logging truck was not injured. The collision resulted in the closure of the highway for several hours.
And Dryden OPP are investigating the sudden death of a Machen resident. Police say they were called to a remote location in Mutri Township yesterday afternoon where the body of a 44-year-old man had been discovered. A post-mortem is to be conducted in Kenora.
Winter fun days and plenty of time with jolly old St. Nick are just some of the highlights of a busy season at Prince Arthur's Landing. The programming for the next few months was announced today and includes an event every single weekend. The return of Winter Fun Days provides 12 weeks of free activities at the park. It kicks off this Sunday with a breakfast with Santa, sleigh rides, and a skate with Santa later in the day. Attendance for the weekly events was hit or miss last year. Programmer Megan Shanks believes that will improve with better communication and a little help from Mother Nature.
With the snow, that was kind of a limitation as well. We were running a lot of winter fun day programs that were kind of dependent on snow, which we still made it work, but I think that might have had to do with it as well. But we're really hoping for a good attendance and really trying to plug that every Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. at Prince Arthur's Landing for the winter season.
Some other returning events that were a big hit last year include Spark in the Park on December 22nd. The Winterfest Family Day event will cap off the season's activities on February 17th with entertainment and fireworks.
The Thunder Bay Catholic District School Board will have some familiar faces to lead their trustees. Bob Hupka was elected last night over Kathy O'Brien as chair of the board. It's a position that Hupka has held for the past 7 years. Tony Romeo is back as vice chair after serving in that position for more than 6 years. Hupka says he is pleased with the Catholic Board's current position, with steady enrollment and a higher than average results in the latest EQAO testing for students.
1 in 7 Ontarians live with some form of disability. Every day they're faced with physical, economic, and social barriers that make it hard for them to be equal members of society. Today, the United Nations flag was raised in front of Thunder Bay City Hall to commemorate International Day of Persons with Disabilities. The celebration recognizes the contributions made by people with disabilities within their communities. The event also highlights the work that's being done by the Municipal Accessibility Advisory Committee, whose goal is to make Thunder Bay fully accessible to everyone.
As I say, we've made tremendous steps forward in the whole accessibility. You look at transit, you look at the efforts to improve sidewalk curbs and ramping for people in wheelchairs, just getting documentation made available in alternate formats, having the city website.
For the next month at City Hall, displays will be available that provide information on the municipal multi-year accessibility plan and Thunder Bay's emergency preparedness plan.
For most people, Christmas is about being home for the holidays and spending time with family and loved ones. However, for those who are faced with undergoing chemotherapy in coming weeks, being home just may not be possible. Today, the Regional Health Sciences Foundation kicked off their annual Christmas fundraising appeal with a goal of $100,000. Money raised goes directly to supporting the purchase of new chemotherapy chairs and other needed equipment for patients who are accessing treatment here in Thunder Bay. The new chairs will not only help make it more comfortable for patients, but give them the ability to stay a little closer to home.
Facing cancer treatment or chemotherapy, the last thing you want to be doing is driving back and forth for such a thing, and it's not medically advisable. So having the care close to home in your home community, so you can come, get your care, and then sleep in your own bed, have your family and friends around you. That's everything.
Now, in recognition of each donation, a personalized star will be added to the grand Christmas tree that stands in the lobby of